I was standing in the hallway of Pearson General Hospital, looking through the window as my daughter slept in ICU bed 7, when a young ER doctor came toward me. Dr. Chen avoided eye contact. He pretended to review something on his tablet, but as he walked past, he slipped something small and solid into my hand. His fingers were shaking. I looked down at the folded sticky note. I waited until he turned the corner before unfolding it. The handwriting was hurried, nearly panicked. The ink was smudged where his thumb had pressed too firmly. The lab results don't match food poisoning. This wasn't an accident. Check your home security footage from tonight before you speak to anyone. What I saw on that camera did more than break my trust. It exposed a plan that had been unfolding for months, and it almost cost me everything I had spent my life building. But before I explain what that footage showed, let me tell you how I ended up in that hospital corridor at 11 on a frozen February night in Toronto, convinced I had poisoned my own daughter. My name is Thomas Whitmore. I am 67 years old. I worked as a medical examiner for the Toronto Police Service for 4 decades. I have conducted more than 8,000 autopsies. I know what death looks like. I know what poisoning looks like. I know how to tell an accident from something intentional. But when your own child is lying in a hospital bed, logic fails you. Fear takes control, and guilt becomes the sharpest instrument of all. The evening began like any other. It was Rebecca's idea to have Sunday dinner at my house. My daughter is 38 years old. She is married to Derek Lang, a commercial real estate broker who drives a BMW he can barely afford and wears suits that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. They live in a condo in Liberty Village that I helped them purchase 3 years ago. I contributed $200,000 as a gift, with no expectation of repayment. Rebecca is my only child. Her mother, Margaret, died of breast cancer 4 years ago. Since then, it has been just the two of us getting through holidays, birthdays, and Sunday dinners. That Sunday, Rebecca called me at 2 in the afternoon. "Dad," she said, and I heard that strained cheerfulness in her voice, the kind I'd been noticing more often. Derek and I were thinking, why don't we come over for dinner tonight? We haven't seen you in weeks. I miss you. I should have felt pleased, but something didn't sit right. We had dinner together the previous Sunday and the one before that. Over the last 2 months, the visits had become more frequent and more pressing. Still, I dismissed the feeling. Maybe I was being overly suspicious. Maybe my daughter genuinely wanted time with her aging father. Of course, I told her. I said I would make her mother's roast chicken, the one with rosemary and garlic. "Perfect," Rebecca replied. Then she hesitated. "Dad, could you open that bottle of wine? The Bordeaux from your cellar, the 2015? I paused. That bottle was worth around $400, something I had been saving for a meaningful occasion. "Sure," I said carefully. "What are we celebrating?" "Nothing," she answered too quickly. "I just think life is short. We should enjoy the good things while we can." I spent the afternoon preparing dinner. I was never a skilled cook, but Margaret taught me a few recipes before she became too ill to stand at the stove. The roast chicken was one of them. I could still picture her hands guiding mine, showing me how to slide the rosemary under the skin and tie the legs with twine. I set the table with her fine china, the blue-rimmed set that once belonged to her grandmother. I placed the silver candlesticks and ironed the linen napkins. By the time Rebecca and Derek arrived at 6:30, the house smelled the way it used to when Margaret was alive, like family and familiarity. But the moment they walked in, I sensed something was wrong. Rebecca hugged me, but it felt rehearsed, almost artificial. Derek shook my hand with his usual forceful grip, as if he were asserting something. "Tom," he said. He has never called me Thomas, always Tom, as if we were equals, as if he hadn't married into this family but claimed it. "Great to see you, man. Smells amazing." Rebecca was already moving through the house, her heels echoing on the hardwood floors. "The place looks good, Dad. You've been keeping it tidy." "I do my best," I said, following them into the dining room. "I know it's large for one person, but I can't imagine leaving. Your mother loved this house." "About that," Derek began, and Rebecca shot him a sharp look, a clear warning. "We'll talk later," she said. "Let's eat first." We sat down. I carved the chicken and poured the wine. We talked about Derek's work, Rebecca's yoga classes, and the snowstorm forecasted to hit Toronto overnight. Beneath the polite conversation, I could feel the tension, the sense of anticipation. They wanted something. I just didn't know what yet. We were halfway through the main course when Rebecca's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen and the color drained from her face. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," she replied, but her hand trembled as she placed the phone face down on the table. "Just work." Derek reached over and squeezed her knee beneath the table. I saw it. The gesture was meant to be reassuring, but it felt more like a signal. Don't. Not yet. I was about to ask what was happening when Rebecca abruptly pushed her chair back. "Dad," she said, and her voice was different, thinner. "Daddy, I don't feel well." "What's wrong?" I stood up. Derek rose too, but he didn't go toward her. He just watched. "I think I'm going to be sick," Rebecca said, and then it happened right there at the table. Harsh, uncontrollable vomiting that brought everything up, the chicken, the wine, all of it. She collapsed forward, and I caught her before she hit the floor. "Call 911, I shouted at Derek, but he was already dialing. "Yes, we need an ambulance," he said into the phone. "My wife is vomiting uncontrollably. We're at her father's house. He cooked dinner. I think she's been poisoned." Poisoned. The word struck me hard. "What are you talking about?" I said. "Derek, I used fresh ingredients. Everything was cooked properly." "I don't know," Derek replied, still watching Rebecca instead of me. Maybe something was off. Maybe the chicken wasn't fully cooked. "Stay with me, Rebecca. Stay with me." The ambulance arrived within 7 minutes. The paramedics placed Rebecca on a stretcher. She was barely responsive, muttering incoherently. One of them, a woman with a calm expression, looked at me. "Sir, did everyone eat the same food?" "Yes," I said. "I ate the chicken." "Derek ate it too." "Are you feeling sick?" "No," I said. "I feel fine." She noted it on her tablet. "We're taking her to Pearson General. You should come with us." In the ambulance, I sat beside my daughter and held her hand. It was cold and damp. I had seen this presentation many times. Poisoning often causes nausea, vomiting, excessive salivation, and abdominal pain. But different poisons behave differently. Bacterial food poisoning, like Salmonella or E. coli, takes hours, sometimes days, to appear. Rebecca became ill within 90 minutes. That timing didn't fit unless it was something else, a fast-acting chemical toxin. But I had eaten the same meal and drunk the same wine. Why wasn't I sick? A troubling thought settled in. What if this had nothing to do with the food? At the hospital, Rebecca was taken straight into the ER. Derek and I waited together. He was texting someone. "Who are you messaging?" I asked. "Rebecca's friends," he said without looking up. "They should know." "She'll be fine," I said, though even then I wasn't convinced. Derek finally looked at me. His expression was sharp, deliberate. "I hope so, Tom, because if something happens to her because of that dinner you made, I don't know what I'll do." It was a threat, barely concealed. In that moment, I understood that whatever was happening, Derek was involved. 2 hours later, Dr. Chen came out. He was young, maybe mid-30s, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and the drained look of someone coming off a long shift. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, "your daughter is stable. We've pumped her stomach and administered activated charcoal. We're running a full toxicology screen. What do you think it was?" I asked. "Food poisoning?" Dr. Chen hesitated. "Her symptoms are consistent with poisoning, but the onset was unusually fast. We'll know more when the lab results return." "How long?" "A few hours." Derek stood. "Can I see her?" "She's sedated," Dr. Chen said. "You can see her in about 30 minutes. We've moved her to the ICU as a precaution." Then it happened. As Dr. Chen turned to leave and passed me, he pressed something into my hand. I didn't look at it right away. I waited until Derek went to the bathroom. Then I unfolded the sticky note and read it. "The lab results don't match food poisoning. This wasn't an accident. Check your home security footage from tonight before you talk to anyone." My heart started racing. I looked up, searching for Dr. Chen, but he was gone. I stood there in the corridor, holding the note, trying to understand it. If this wasn't food poisoning, then what was it? And why would a doctor who didn't know me risk warning me? I thought back over the evening, Rebecca's call that afternoon, the request for the expensive wine, the timing of the visit, Derek's behavior, his immediate claim that she'd been poisoned. And then I thought about my house. 2 years earlier, after a nearby break-in, I had installed security cameras, one at the front door, one in the living room, and one in the kitchen above the stove. Margaret had insisted on that one so she could watch dinner from her phone while resting during chemotherapy. I hadn't checked the footage in months, but it was all stored in the cloud, time-stamped. I took out my phone and opened the security app. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. I selected the kitchen camera. I scrolled back to 6:30 that evening, to the moment Rebecca and Derek arrived. I watched us sit down at the table. I watched myself carve the chicken and pour the wine. Then I saw Rebecca do something that made my blood go cold. It was subtle, so subtle that without knowing what to look for, it would have been easy to miss. While I was in the kitchen preparing dessert, while Derek deliberately kept me distracted with a made-up problem about his car, Rebecca reached into her purse. She took out a small vial, opened it, and poured its contents into her own wine glass. Then she drank it. All of it. 3 long swallows. After that, she waited. She waited for it to work. She waited for the right moment to start vomiting. She had poisoned herself. I replayed the footage again and again, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, hoping I was mistaken. I wasn't. My daughter had knowingly taken something that would make her violently ill, fully aware that the blame would fall on me. I sat down on a bench in the hospital hallway because my legs could no longer support me. Why would she do this? What could she possibly gain by framing me for poisoning her? Then, I remembered a conversation from 3 weeks earlier. Rebecca and Derek had been at my house talking about the property, about how large it was, how I didn't really need all that space, how it might be easier if I moved into a smaller, more manageable condo. "Dad, you're 67, Rebecca had said. "What if you fall? What if something happens and no one is there to help you?" I had told her I was fine, that I wasn't ready to downsize. Derek had stepped in. "We're just concerned about you, Tom, and property values around here have gone up a lot. If you sold, you'd make a fortune. You could live very comfortably somewhere smaller." I had ended the discussion, made it clear I wasn't interested. Now, watching the footage, I understood. They didn't want me to sell the house for my benefit. They wanted it for theirs. And if I wouldn't agree willingly, they were prepared to force the issue. They would make me look careless and unfit, a father who poisoned his own daughter because he was too old, too irresponsible, too much of a risk to live alone. Once that story was established, the next steps were obvious. A lawsuit, an attempt to have me declared mentally unfit, a move to obtain power of attorney. I thought about Derek texting in the waiting room. He wasn't messaging Rebecca's friends. He was likely contacting a lawyer, documenting events, preparing a case. And Rebecca, lying in that ICU bed, was the central witness in a scheme she had planned herself. I felt anger rising, a need to confront her, to demand answers. Why would my own daughter do this to me? But Dr. Chen's message had been clear. Before you talk to anyone, he knew something, and I needed to understand it before taking action. I found Dr. Chen in the staff break room, holding what looked like his 5th cup of coffee that night. When he saw me, his expression shifted from fatigue to concern. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, "you shouldn't be back here." "I watched the footage," I said quietly. "I saw what she did." He looked around to confirm we were alone, then pulled out his phone and showed me a document. It was Rebecca's toxicology report. "See this?" he said, pointing to a line. "This is ipecac syrup. It's an emetic. It causes vomiting. It used to be used in poisoning cases, but it's no longer recommended because it's too harsh on the body." "Where would she get that?" I asked. "It's easy to buy online," he said. "Veterinary supply sites sell it. It's used to make dogs vomit if they ingest something dangerous." I stared at the report. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because 3 months ago, the same thing happened to my mother," Dr. Chen said. His voice was controlled, but tight. "My brother's wife convinced him that my mother was becoming senile. She staged small incidents at first, forgetting to turn off the stove, leaving doors unlocked. Then one night, at a family dinner, she put ipecac in my mother's tea. It looked like food poisoning." "What happened?" I asked. "My brother filed for power of attorney," he said. "He moved my mother into a care facility. Then he and his wife refinanced her house and took out $400,000. By the time I understood what was happening, most of it was gone." "Did you go to the police?" He shook his head. "My mother refused to press charges. She said she didn't want to tear the family apart. She died 6 months later, and my brother inherited everything." He looked at me, his eyes carrying years of regret. When I saw your daughter's lab results, I recognized the pattern. I couldn't prove what was done to my mother, but you might be able to prove what's being done to you. I left the break room with a clear plan forming. I wasn't going to confront Rebecca. Not yet. I was going to do what I had done for 40 years as a medical examiner. I was going to collect evidence. I was going to document everything. I was going to build a case. And I intended to make sure that when the truth finally came out, there would be no doubt about it. The next morning, Derek called me. Tom, he said, using that practiced tone of concern that made me uneasy. Rebecca's awake. She wants to see you. How is she? I asked, forcing my voice to sound anxious, remorseful. She's weak, Derek replied. But she's going to be fine. The doctors think it was severe food poisoning. They said you and I were lucky we didn't get sick as well. I feel awful, I said, and I did, just not in the way Derek assumed. Listen, Tom, he continued. I know this was an accident, but Rebecca and I have been talking. We think it might be time to consider some changes. What kind of changes? I asked. Living alone in that large house, cooking for yourself, it's a lot to handle, he said. And you're not getting any younger. What if something worse happens next time? What if you leave the gas on? What if you fall down the stairs? I clenched the phone until my knuckles ached. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully. But I'm fine. Just think about it, Derek replied. We love you. We want what's best for you. I ended the call and immediately contacted my lawyer, Edward Morrison. Edward had handled Margaret's will and had known our family for over 20 years. Edward, I said when he answered, I need your help, and I need you to believe me when I say this is going to sound unbelievable, but it's true. I told him everything. The dinner, the security footage, Dr. Chen's warning, the ipecac. Edward listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. Thomas, he finally said, this is elder abuse. This is fraud. We need to involve the police. Not yet, I said. I need more evidence. I need to see the full extent of what they're planning. He asked what I had in mind, and when I explained, for the first time since watching that footage, I felt something other than betrayal. I felt steady again, like the medical examiner who had spent 40 years letting evidence speak. Over the next 3 days, I played the role of the guilty, frightened father. I visited Rebecca in the hospital. I apologized repeatedly. I even cried, which wasn't entirely an act because part of me was grieving the daughter I believed I had raised. Derek was always present, directing the conversation, staying close. On the third day, Rebecca was discharged. They didn't return to their condo. They came to my house. Just until I'm stronger, Rebecca said. I feel safer here with you, Dad. I prepared the guest room for them. I cooked every meal, carefully recording and photographing each ingredient I used. And I listened. At night, I listened to their conversations through a baby monitor I had hidden in the room, technology Margaret and I had bought when Rebecca was an infant, now repurposed. He's buying it, Derek said on the fourth night. I think we can move on to the next phase. What if he resists? Rebecca asked. He won't, Derek replied. We have the hospital records, we have witnesses, we have him on tape apologizing for poisoning you. If he fights this, we'll ruin him. I still feel bad, Rebecca said softly. He's my father. Your father who's sitting on a $3 million house while we're buried in debt, Derek snapped. Your father who could help us but refuses. We tried asking the easy way. This is survival. I know, she said. I just wish there was another option. There isn't, Derek said. Tomorrow I call my lawyer. We file for emergency power of attorney, citing medical incompetence and the poisoning incident. Once we control his finances, we sell the house, clear our debts, and place your father in a comfortable retirement home. I recorded every word. The next morning, Derek sat me down at the kitchen table. He had documents with him. Tom, he said, Rebecca and I have talked, and we think that given what happened, it might be best if we helped you manage things for a while, just until you feel more confident. He slid the papers toward me. Durable financial power of attorney. Signing them would give Derek and Rebecca full control over my assets, my property, my medical decisions, everything. I don't understand, I said, pretending confusion. You think I can't handle my own finances? It's not about that, Rebecca said. She looked tired, conflicted. It's about keeping you safe. I don't know, I said slowly. This feels like a serious step. Derek's expression hardened. Tom, let me be direct. What happened last week could have killed Rebecca. If we hadn't gotten her to the hospital in time, she could have died from food you prepared. We're not accusing you. We know it was an accident. But legally, you created a dangerous situation. And if you're unwilling to take steps to ensure it never happens again, we may have to look at other options. Are you threatening me? I asked. I'm being realistic, Derek replied. Sign the papers, Tom. Let us help you, or we'll have to involve the courts. I looked at Rebecca, my daughter, the little girl I taught to ride a bike, the teenager I stayed up late with while she studied for exams, the young woman I walked down the aisle. Rebecca, I said, is this really what you want? She couldn't look at me. It's for the best, Dad. I picked up the pen. Derek smiled. And that was the moment my lawyer, Edward Morrison, walked into the room. He wasn't alone. Behind him were two Toronto Police Service officers and a detective I had worked with years earlier, Sarah Mendoza. Thomas Whitmore doesn't need to sign anything, Edward said. Derek stood so abruptly that his chair tipped over. Who the hell are you? Edward Morrison, he replied calmly. Mr. Whitmore's attorney, and these are Officers Park and Stevens along with Detective Mendoza. They're here regarding an ongoing investigation into fraud and elder abuse. Rebecca's face drained of color. What is this? Detective Mendoza stepped forward. Mrs. Lang, we have evidence that you intentionally ingested ipecac syrup on the evening of February 18th to frame your father for poisoning you. We also have recorded conversations between you and your husband discussing plans to obtain fraudulent power of attorney over your father's assets. That's ridiculous, Derek said, though his voice shook. We have video footage from Mr. Whitmore's security cameras, Mendoza continued. We have testimony from Dr. James Chen at Pearson General Hospital. We have toxicology reports, and we have audio recordings of conversations between you and Mrs. Lang outlining the plan. Rebecca began to cry. Dad, she said. Dad, please. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do it. We were desperate. Derek said it was the only way. The only way to what? I asked. My voice sounded distant, controlled. To survive, Derek said angrily. You want the truth, Tom? We're broke. We owe $300,000 to people who don't tolerate delays, people who make examples of debtors. We tried banks. We tried everything. And then we saw you sitting alone in this house with millions in equity, and you wouldn't help us. Your own daughter asked, and you said no. You never asked for help, I said. You asked me to sell my home, the home I built with my wife, the home where I raised my daughter. You didn't want help. You wanted my life savings to cover gambling debts. It wasn't gambling, Rebecca sobbed. It was investments. Derek said they were guaranteed. He said we'd earn it all back. I'm not interested in your explanations, I said. I turned to Detective Mendoza. What happens now? We're taking both of them in for questioning, she said. The Crown Attorney will determine charges, likely fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud. As the officers moved to place the cuffs on Derek and Rebecca, my daughter looked back at me. Dad, she said, I love you. I know you don't believe me, but I do. I wanted to tell her I loved her too, but the words wouldn't come. The daughter I loved would never have done this. That Rebecca was gone. Maybe she had never truly been there. After they left, Edward and I sat in the quiet kitchen. Are you okay? He asked. No, I said honestly, but I will be. What will you do now? I thought about Margaret, about the life we built, about the daughter we raised who became someone I no longer recognized. I'm going to keep living, I said, in my house, on my terms, and I'm going to make sure what happened to Dr. Chen's mother, what almost happened to me, doesn't happen to others. 6 months later, I testified at Rebecca and Derek's trial. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, audio recordings, bank records showing their debts, text messages between Derek and the people he owed. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Derek was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for fraud and conspiracy. Rebecca received 18 months, reduced after she testified against Derek and showed genuine remorse. I watched from the courtroom as my daughter was led away in handcuffs. She didn't look at me. But that wasn't the end. 3 months after the trial, I received a letter from Rebecca, written from the Vanier Center for Women in Milton, Ontario. She apologized, truly, without excuses. She wrote about therapy, about programs helping her understand how she lost herself under Derek's influence. She didn't ask for forgiveness or money. She only wanted me to know she was trying to become someone worthy of the father she had betrayed. I wrote back. I didn't say I forgave her. I couldn't, not yet, but I told her I would visit, and I did. Once a month, I drive to Milton and sit across from my daughter in the visiting room. We speak carefully at first, then more honestly. It's not the relationship we once had that ended in a hospital corridor when I read a note from a stranger, but it is something. Maybe with time it can grow into something real. I am 68 now. I still live in the house Margaret and I bought 42 years ago. I still make Sunday dinners, though these days it is usually just for me. But I have also started volunteering. I work with an organization that helps older adults protect themselves from financial exploitation. I give presentations, I share my experience, I talk about the warning signs, sudden pressure to sign legal papers, being isolated from friends and family, guilt-based persuasion, subtle manipulation. Dr. James Chen and I have become friends. We meet once a month for coffee, two men who understand what it means to love someone who betrayed you. He talks about his mother and the regret he still carries. I talk about Rebecca and the hope I am trying to preserve. We remind each other that the hardest part is not surviving betrayal, but learning how to trust again. The house still has security cameras. I still check the footage now and then, a habit I haven't fully let go of. But mostly, I try to focus on the good memories. The Christmas mornings when Rebecca was little and believed in magic. The summers at the cottage on Lake Muskoka. The day I walked her down the aisle, proud and confident that I was entrusting her to someone who would love her as she deserved. I was wrong about Derek. But perhaps I am not wrong to hope that somewhere inside the woman I visit in that prison visiting room, there is still part of the daughter I raised. The child who told me she loved me every night before bed. The girl who cried when we had to put our dog down because she couldn't bear to see anything suffer. If there is a lesson in all of this, it is not about blind trust or idealized family bonds. It is about understanding your own value. I am not only the man who built a life. I am the man who refused to let that life be taken from him. I am a medical examiner who spent 40 years uncovering truth through evidence, and when I needed that skill the most, I did not lose it. If anyone ever tries to make you doubt yourself, to convince you that you are too old, too incapable, too much of a burden to deserve control over your own life, remember this: you know yourself better than anyone. Trust that understanding. Protect it. Because your life, your home, and your dignity are not negotiable. They belong to you, and they are worth defending.